Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for sticking around for this Q&A. We do have time for a bit of a bigger conversation with all of you, so if you do have questions, I just encourage you, raise your hands up nice and high. We'll do our best to get to as many of you as the conversation going. It is with a great pleasure that I am here on this stage to invite on a very talented actress, ladies and gentlemen, Shailene Woodley. Yeah. And so before we open up to the floor, there's just a couple kind of questions I want to say and go kind of through. And in terms of what initially was it about this project and this series that really kind of drew you into kind of portraying this character, and how did it become what we just saw tonight?
Okay, so I was outside and was like, oh, I should have snuck in there to remind myself what happened in the first and second episode. It's been a while, and we just finished season 2, so forgive me if some of my answers are not specific to these 2 episodes. No, so I had done these big studio films called the Divergent series, and it was beautiful in a lot of ways and very trying and difficult in many, many ways. Mostly because it was just a giant budget studio film, and it was my first time being in an environment that didn't feel necessarily as creative as other projects, simply because of the monetary system and all of the other sort of political aspects at play, although they were creative. And so after those movies, I kind of felt like I had nothing left to give as an actor. I felt a little bit jaded and stifled as an artist, and I told my agents not to send me anything because I wanted to go off and study some other things and travel a little bit and just explore other professions for a while. So they respected me, and they didn't. And a year passed or so, and I was about to leave to India. I was going to go there for a few months by myself, and they said, was it before India or after? I think it was before India. They sent me Big Little Lies, and they were like, heads up, we know you're obsessed with this director, Jean-Marc Vallée, and there's this amazing project that, you should really take a look at. And I was like, guys, my time's not up. I'm not ready to get back in this industry. I just still need to, because I do feel like as an actor, you have to pull from a well of your own experience. And I felt, because I've been acting since I was 5 years old, that in my mid-20s, I didn't have anything left to pull from, because I didn't know who I was as someone in her mid-20s, and I didn't know what it was like to be a woman in the world yet, because I had only ever been sort of a young girl and a young adult. So I really wanted to develop myself before I took on another character in order to accurately portray someone new, and I didn't feel like I was there yet. They sent it to me, and I was like, cool, I'm not going to read it. I'm really on this mission of self and studies. I was studying some other things, and they called me again. They're like, you really need to read this project. It's really incredible. And then Laura Dern, who I had worked with on another project, called me and was like, hey, I heard, this project's in your hands. You should really read it. And she sort of knew where I was at in life, and none of it was about not wanting to be a part of the project. It was more just kind of not feeling like I was ready, to be honest, to act again, because I didn't feel like I could offer really very much as an actor. And anyway, I read it because I had to, and I wanted to, and I immediately fell in love with it. And I fell in love with not only the aspect, when I read something, I don't ever really read it for the character. I kind of forget which character I'm playing. I read it for the story and how all the characters work together, and the emotions and the feelings that I get based on the relationships between everyone and everything, including landscapes, etc. And I was moved by this was before the Me Too movement, or actually no, it wasn't. It was before the mainstream Me Too movement, not the OG Me Too movement. Before Hollywood kind of adopted it and used it, and I was really amazed by the fact that there was a project that was willing to explore female psychology without demonizing men or without demonizing women themselves. It was just very honest and authentic, and there was really no blame except for there's just a lot of confusion and lack of accountability and responsibility amongst men and women. And I loved that at the end of the series, for me, and I don't want to ruin anything, but I really do feel like this series is about women who have very little in common on a materialistic surface level, but eventually use empathy and compassion to overcome every single indifference in order to support and stand for one another. And I think that that's really the true crisis that we're facing in the world, is that we just can't seem to support one another despite our differences, and we can't hear one another despite our opinions and our lack of and our sensibilities. So that's really, I read it and I fell in love with it, and then of course Jean-Marc Vallée is a director I've always wanted to work with, and there's, you know, some people like Reese Witherspoon and Nicole Kidman and some other big names, yeah, and Zoe Kravitz jumped on board, and I'd worked with her, and it kind of became this dream project, and it really it made me fall in love with acting again.
Well, and again, before we open up to the floor, one of the things I want to talk to you about is the fact that, like, of course you've been working in, like, film, but, like, a lot of your roots have been in TV. You know, you were working on television series, and I think in the years that have passed, I'm kind of, like, curious in terms of your evolution, kind of how has your experience been in evolving, in working on another show, and kind of having those kind of, like, different things of what you've learned in the industry, and what have you kind of, like, brought back into this, and how has it evolved for you? Like, it must have been a lot of learning opportunities, like you just talked about how many people that are fantastic in this show, but in the evolution of a decade, or, like, well, you said you were working at the age of 5. Two decades.
And I'm only 26, so that's...
no, fair. Like, yeah, in that 2 decades, like, how has that experience been now, and what have you brought in terms of what you've learned to bring it into Big Little Lies?
I mean, I did a TV show from 15 to 21, and it was on this channel in America called ABC Family. It was a teenage show. And it was a very, very difficult experience. I signed up for 6 years. I was in a 6-year contract. After really kind of the first season, I didn't feel creatively aligned or morally aligned, and it really tried my integrity at a young age and made me extremely cognizant of business deals and contracts and creative involvement in a project that you are legally attaching yourself to longer than a prescribed creative date. And so past that experience, that was called Secret Life of an American Teenager, and past that experience, I really made an effort not to sign contracts that were longer than a couple months. And then I signed the Divergent contract, which was 4 years. And that experience was fulfilling in many ways and also trying in many ways. And so after that, I was really like, no more, no more long contracts. I'll do, you know, sort of moment-by-moment basis. And this never felt like, I got in a lot of trouble at the Emmys a couple years ago, or last year, some time ago, because I said, they were like, oh, do you love TV? Like, tell us your favorite TV show. And I said, I don't watch TV. I haven't had until recently, I hadn't had a home. I moved out when I was 20 and got rid of everything and have just been living on the road. And so I didn't have a TV to watch TV shows on, and when I stream things, I don't ever think of them as TV shows. Like, they are technically, but for me, it sort of feels like a long movie nowadays, because oftentimes projects or series, unless they're multiple seasons, are directed and developed by one person, and it's the same screenwriter, or there's a small group of people who are leading that series, so it feels kind of more insular than a long series, which is a little bit more dramatic and dynamic in its creative input. But this project never felt like a series. It still does. I mean, the first season we had David E. Kelley, who wrote the entire thing, and Jean-Marc Vallée, who directed the entire thing. So it was basically a 5.5-month movie that we shot. And then the second season, we had Andrea Arnold, who directed, and David Kelley, who also wrote it, and that again felt like a 7-month movie. So they sort of just felt like very long feature films, and they were handled like feature films. In the TV world, I learned a lot about technicality. You have to hit your mark, and you have to know where your light is, and you have to know all the technical things while still staying in character, because you have to get 8 scenes in one day, and if you don't get those 8 scenes, you cost production $90,000. So it's very technical, but this project never felt like that. It was very fluid, especially season 1, the way Jean-Marc Vallée directs with the cinematographer. They both are carrying the camera, and you might think they're filming here, but he could turn around any minute and film you here, and so it kind of felt like a play in a way, especially all the scenes at the schools and with the kids, where you had 300 people on set. It's very easy to sort of take a break and be like, oh, they're covering Nicole right now, and then they turn around and they cover you. And it was beautiful and fun and spontaneous, and felt like we were theatrically acting, I guess, acting in a theater versus acting on a TV show, which is much more mechanical. But I do think that the lines are blurry. Like when I first did TV, it was extremely methodical, and now I think, unless you still have your 3-camera operations and comedic shows, but apart from that, I do think like so much of TV is so cinematic now, and I think streaming has really brought that to it. I'm so fascinated as an actor to sort of see, you know, how film continues and how TV continues, and if they will continue in their own ways, or if they're just going to kind of blend more and more together, because I think this is a great example of something that could be considered a TV show, because there's multiple episodes, but because you can stream them, it's just kind of one giant long movie. Like when Titanic came out and you got the 2 VHSs, you could have been on one. I sort of think if this was, you know, back when we had VHSs, this would be 3 VHSs. And I don't know that we'd call it a TV show, but we would just call it a very long movie, you know.
3 VHSs.
Yeah, 3 VHSs.
Well, I do want to give the audience an opportunity to get in on this conversation, because I don't want to hog the mic. So if you do have questions, I believe we have a microphone in the audience. Is that true? Oh, is it still on stage? I can repeat the question if need be.
I think we can hear, right?
Yeah.
It's quite small. It's not too big in here.
Oh.
Okay, we're good.
Yeah, we're good. So yeah, if you do have, we got one right there.
Yeah. Was it emotionally challenging shooting this series, since it touches on such sensitive and important topics?
Yeah, so the question is, was it kind of emotionally challenging, because it deals with kind of a lot of sensitive topics, and how was your experience in doing that?
It was extremely challenging. I mean, I think the biggest thing for me in playing this character was I'm playing a, oh God, you've only seen 2 episodes. What can I say and not say? Have people seen the show? I'm playing, someone who's going through trauma of experiencing an assault, and being a part of something that she was not proactively inclined to accept. If that gives you any sort of hint as to what I'm trying to not say. So it was challenging, because I felt like playing this character wasn't just about me and how, and experiences I've had in life and trauma that maybe I've had in my past, but kind of the trauma of just being a woman in the world, or being a young mother in the world. I don't have kids, but I have lots of friends who had kids as teenagers or in their young 20s or even 30. I mean, having kids is freaking mind-blowing, you know. Your whole world just shifts, and this girl had a kid at 19 and was pregnant at 18 and has been a single mom since, and doesn't really have family who's around, and I just wanted to be sensitive to all the people out there who aren't acting, and who is, you know, this is their daily reality. And another thing that was really important to me was, yes, we're exploring female psyche, and I think the reason people love the show is it's so relatable. Everyone can relate to infidelity or assault or you know, unhealthy toxic relationships or lying or deceit, etc., betrayal. But not everyone can relate to the very privileged life that these people live in Monterey, California, where their average income is $500,000 plus a year. You know, it's a very sort of insular world, and one thing playing Jane that I was excited to do was sort of bring someone who was an outsider, not afraid or embarrassed to be who she was within the sort of confinements and restrictions of this very polarized insular community, but still have those insecurities of, I want to be seen as an equal because I'm a mother, and yet I'm still a kid myself, trying to figure it out, and I don't know these words that you're using or these designers that you're talking about I don't have the paychecks that you have, but I'm still human and I still matter and I still emotionally relate to you despite our surface connection. And that was important to me because I think a lot of us feel that way. No matter where we're from or no matter what we look like, I think there's always a group of people who we think are more than ourselves. And I think that goes for the richest of the rich in the world, and I think it goes to the poorest of the poor in the world. I think we always put something and someone else above us. And to be able to break that down and dissect why that is that way and how we can sort of overcome that by appreciating and recognizing our own self-worth despite the chaos that surrounds us was something that felt important and challenging because it's a tricky thing to do without doing it. I don't know. It's just tricky. I haven't figured it out. I'm in my 20s. I'm nowhere close to figuring it out.
Sure. All right, we're going to keep it back into the floor. There's a question around the front.
You don't have children, but you had a lovely relationship with the son, Ziggy, in this TV series or whatever it is. How did you develop that relationship? And I hope it continues to the season 2. And have you acted with children before?
Yeah, so the question is kind of developing your relationship with your son and your son in the show, and then how did that form and develop, and Darpa.
We got really lucky with Ian. His name's Ian. His dad is a theater. He's playing the King in Hamilton right now on Broadway. His dad's this famous Broadway star, and his mom is very supportive of his career, his young career, and Ian's sort of one of those kids who's just a kind of like a force of nature. He was 6 when we started filming and had such a strong sense of identity and self, way stronger than I think any adult on that set, but was also still very much a kid. So he could learn his lines, he could do all the technical side of acting, but in the middle of the shot he'd just start picking his nose. Or like there's one scene in the series where I'm throwing a baseball to him and he throws it back and I threw it and it hit him in the nose and he started crying and he looked at me and he was like, Shay! And he got so mad and I ran over to him and they just kept filming and it's in the series. They ended up using the shot and they just shot around where he said my actual name, but it was so wonderful working with him because he was so pure and innocent and so excited to be there and understood everything about what was happening on set, but still had this very naive innocence where he'd wander off and we couldn't find him and we were supposed to shoot 30 minutes ago and it's because he's climbing a tree somewhere. And all the kids were like that, and I think that's why, you feel the show in a different way because the kids are so well cast and so brilliant at just being honest and available and present, and I think Jean-Marc Vallée does a beautiful job at using them. I think it's easy in a lot of films to put the camera on a kid for a long time because it pulls our heartstrings and we're all like, oh my gosh, it's a kid, and I think he does a really good balance of recognizing the emotions in the kids, but not oversaturating us with it, so that it really leaves us feeling incredibly impacted. And then we just got lucky because they're just so talented, and that was really all them. Like we didn't direct them hardly at all. They really kind of just brought it and they filmed it and they captured the spontaneous moments and they captured the premeditated moments and edited it to look just, incredibly authentic.
We still have a bit of time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions, so we're going to jump right there, and then maybe one more after that. But, hey, we got a microphone.
Fancy.
Can you talk about working with the director, Jean-Marc Vallée, and maybe, in comparison to someone like the people on the Television series, and
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Jean-Marc Vallée, I've always wanted to work with him because I found him to be, his movies to just, I love music and I think he's so good with the way that he uses music in his projects, but they were so emotive and emotional, but not slow. Like he kept everything moving in all of his past movies, but still gave time for the audience and the characters to breathe and relate and understand each other, and that's how he was on this show. He's also not afraid to get, frustrated with you. Which I think there's sort of this thing right now, and I experienced this on a lot of projects, not just the Divergent series, but where directors kind of maybe get frustrated or don't like what you're doing, but they don't want to offend you, so they don't tell you, instead of just being like, what are you doing? That doesn't work. And then kind of come up and talk to you about how to make it better. And John Mark, I mean, he's French-Canadian, and I think because there was a language barrier, sometimes maybe people thought he came out like incredibly impassioned, but I really respected that as an actor, because you always want to feel like you're giving your director what they want, and if you're not receiving feedback, then you don't really know if you're giving them what they want. And he was completely unafraid to direct us and yet also trust us. One other thing I really loved about him, he added the grit in this show. Like the grit in the show wasn't necessarily in the scripts, and I don't think it was even in the book. It was really Jean-Marc. Like God, what did you guys see in episode 1 and 2? There's like, my character has a gun, and he put that in the show. He put the music, the mood, the tone, the set decoration, everything was very calculated by him to add sort of a, the thrilling aspect of the show, and to get to the final episode to see who did it, and who was the one, who got killed, who was the one who did the killing, who was the one who choked the kid, who was the one who didn't choke the kid. Like, all of that stuff was, the base of it was in the script, and David Kelly is brilliant, and it was all in the script, but Jean-Marc just added sort of this darkness that I don't think we would have had without him, but it wasn't too heavy. It was never heavy-handed, and he really sat there and gave you the time to get to a place emotionally, and he was patient and also very impatient, and I think that added to the stress of some scenes, which was great. Yeah, I would work with him again in a heartbeat. I think he's brilliant. I often find that people who are from a different culture than my own, being American, and there's plenty of brilliant American filmmakers, but there's something to be said about people who are not from America, who are directors and filmmakers. There's an essence that I think is hard to capture as an American, and I think he does a really brilliant job at sort of marrying like a European filmmaking essence with an American filmmaking essence. He kind of finds the marriage between the two, if that makes any sense at all. That's from my personal limited experience watching European and American films, but I think he's just, he's brilliant. I don't know if you guys saw his movie Demolition, but I thought that was a fantastic movie that very few people saw, and I think he just deserves a lot of credit. He's incredible.
Very much so. And unfortunately, we do have to wrap up, but before we do, I just want to thank you all, not only for coming and all your questions, and thank you so much, Shailene, for not only coming here for the festival, but providing us with this Q&A. We do have to take off, and I just want to say another round of applause for Shailene Woodley.